So often we think we'll recognize the one meant for us by how they check every box on our list. We believe we'll just know because it will feel magical, seamless, maybe even easy. We imagine fireworks, some cosmic certainty, a meeting that leaves no room for doubt. But here's the thing, when God sends you the person who's truly meant for you, it very likely won't look like what you pictured. In fact, it might be the very opposite. You may feel confused, unsure, even resistant, because divine connections, true soul alignments, rarely show up dressed in the costume we expected. What God prepares for us doesn't come to affirm our preferences. It comes to awaken our purpose. And when that happens, the mind rebels, the ego questions, the heart stutters. You wonder, is this really the one? Why don't I feel that instant certainty? And that very hesitation, that moment of inner conflict, is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something real is trying to break through. We are conditioned to believe that love should look a certain way, feel a certain way, move a certain way, tall, funny, spiritual, successful, emotionally available, loves dogs, preferably good with plants and prayer circles. But God doesn't operate through your preferences. He operates through purpose. And when that purpose is wrapped in something unfamiliar, the initial reaction isn't always attraction. Sometimes it's discomfort. Sometimes it's hesitation. Sometimes it's confusion. Because when the real thing comes, it exposes your own unpreparedness, not in a shameful way, but in a revealing way. It reflects the areas still tender, still growing, still in process. You're not confused because it's wrong. You're confused because it doesn't match the narrative you've rehearsed in your mind for years. See, many times the person God sends doesn't come to impress your senses. They come to stretch your soul. They might not say the things you're used to hearing. They might challenge your ideas of love. They might stand in front of you with all their humanity, raw and honest and real, and something in you resists because it doesn't feel like the fantasy. But the fantasy was never the goal. Transformation was. And that's the part no one tells you. When the chosen partner shows up, they will come with a mirror, not a mask. They will hold a reflection of your own process, your own work, your own divine unfolding. And instead of falling in love, you will rise into it step by step, layer by layer. And that kind of love, the kind God orchestrates, doesn't come to validate your expectations. It comes to expand them. So you look at this person and you think, I never imagined them. And yet, something in you recognizes them. You feel it in your stillness. You feel it between the noise. You feel it not in the highs, but in the steadiness. And that's where confusion becomes the cocoon, where understanding is born not through logic, but through presence, not through certainty, but through surrender. Because the most divine encounters are the ones that shake you awake, not with drama, not with chaos, but with quiet disruption, with holy contradiction, with grace that doesn't flatter you, but forms you. And if you ever find yourself in that place, meeting someone who seems all wrong, but feels profoundly right, pause before you walk away. Not every discomfort is danger. Sometimes it's just the soul adjusting to something sacred. So don't run from the confusion. It's not your enemy. It's your invitation and opening, a holy whisper. It is the sound of something ancient and eternal being remembered. And remember this, the truth doesn't always come in thunder. It often arrives as a whisper that confuses you just long enough for your heart to hear it. Sometimes when you meet the one God has chosen for you, it won't make sense, not to your mind at least, but there will be something unexplainable, a tug in the soul, a gentle recognition, a deep breath you didn't know you'd been holding. And in that moment, you might feel torn because your spirit seems to know, but your thoughts can't catch up. You're confused not because it's wrong, but because it's real, too real. And real doesn't always come wrapped in clarity. The spirit moves ahead of the intellect. It whispers long before logic has its say. It doesn't need bullet points or lists or credentials. It knows by resonance. It knows by vibration. And when your spirit recognizes someone, when it leans forward without your permission, it's not asking your mind for approval. It's simply remembering something your body has yet to understand. But that's where it gets tricky, doesn't it? Because the mind wants to make sense of everything. It wants to evaluate, calculate, dissect. It wants to protect you from making mistakes. So when someone walks in and your soul leans in, your brain starts flipping through all the reasons why this doesn't make sense. They don't match your usual type. You just met them. Why are you drawn to them when you barely know them? The confusion sets in, not because your intuition is off, but because your logic hasn't caught up to your knowing. You see, divine connection often bypasses the mind. It moves straight to the heart. And the heart, unlike the brain, isn't interested in structure, it's interested in truth. Not facts, but truth. The kind that can't be articulated, the kind that can't be explained over coffee with friends, the kind that just is. And it is in that space, that gap between recognition and understanding, that we begin to wrestle, because the soul is saying yes, while the ego is saying slow down. And yet, there is something beautiful in that tension. There's something holy about not knowing why you're drawn to someone, only that you are. That mystery, that strange magnetic pull, isn't a flaw in the design. It is the design. It's how the divine reveals itself, not through certainty, but through curiosity, through feeling, through the soft flutter in your chest when they speak, through the peace that settles in your bones when they look at you, not the nervous, anxious energy of infatuation, but the calm assurance of alignment. We're so used to depending on logic for decisions that when something spiritual shows up, we don't trust it. We analyze, we interrogate, we try to reduce it to data, but you can't measure a soul with a checklist. You can't fit divine timing into a calendar app. You can't explain destiny to a mind that only believes in patterns. What you can do, however, is listen. You can lean into that quiet knowing. You can pause long enough to notice what your spirit is trying to say before your thoughts drown it out. Because sometimes the most important truths come without words. They arrive in silence, in synchronicities, in the feeling that something inside you just shifted, even if nothing outside you has changed. And if you ever find yourself in that moment standing before someone who stirs something deep and ancient within you, though your logic screams that it doesn't make sense. Don't dismiss it too quickly. That confusion might be your compass. That inner tug might be the echo of God's voice, gently nudging you toward what your soul already knows, but your mind hasn't learned to trust. Let it be confusing. Let it be unexplainable. That's where the sacred lives, not in what makes sense, but in what makes you still. And you will know it's real, not when it all adds up, but when you no longer need it to. You might think that when you meet the person God has chosen for you, everything will just fall into place, that it'll be smooth, effortless, and completely free of complication. But what if I told you that sometimes confusion isn't a detour? It's the very doorway to divine love. That what feels uncomfortable at first might actually be evidence that something deeper is being stirred. You see, we all carry wounds, childhood wounds, relationship wounds, identity wounds, invisible scars from the moments we didn't feel safe, seen, or loved. And whether we realize it or not, we bring those wounds with us into every connection. We build defenses around them. We dress them up with charm or independence or silence, and we say, I'm ready for love, when really we're just ready to be understood without being truly seen. But here's what makes divine partnerships so different. God doesn't send someone to dance around your wounds. He sends someone who sees straight through them, someone who doesn't settle for your mask, someone who quietly walks past your defenses and says, there you are. That can be terrifying. You may feel confused because they're not reacting the way others have. They don't run when you're distant. They don't flinch when you reveal your flaws. They don't try to fix you, but they don't ignore your pain either. Their presence alone invites healing, not by force, not by pressure, but by reflection. Because when two souls meet, really meet, they don't just fall into romance. They awaken what's been sleeping, and that process, that unraveling, it's messy. Beautiful, yes, but messy. It's a strange paradox how healing and discomfort can walk hand in hand. You expect love to feel like floating, but sometimes love feels like breaking. Not the kind of breaking that shatters you into pieces, but the kind that breaks down the walls you built out of fear. When you meet the one meant for you, you may not feel giddy at first. You might feel exposed, vulnerable, uncertain, and in that space, confusion arises. You'll ask yourself, why am I suddenly thinking about old things I thought I buried? Why am I reacting this way? Why does this feel so intense, even when they're being kind? Because they're not triggering your wounds to hurt you. They're triggering them to heal you. God will often use relationships not just to comfort us, but to confront us, to show us the parts of ourselves still longing to be made whole. This is why the idea of meeting the one being all bliss and harmony is misleading. The truth is, when iron meets iron, sparks fly, but those sparks are what sharpen you. And sometimes the very confusion you feel is your soul recalibrating, adjusting, making room for something real. So if you find yourself pushing someone away because they make you feel too much, pause. Not all emotional intensity is a red flag. Sometimes it's a sacred flag waving gently in the wind, saying, Pay attention. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're just waking up, and maybe the one God sent isn't here to complete you, but to remind you that you were never incomplete to begin with. They won't heal you. That's your journey, but they will hold space for your healing in a way that no one else has. And that alone can feel foreign enough to trigger confusion because it's not what you're used to. It's not chaos. It's not drama. It's not manipulation disguised as love. It's safety. And for someone who's only known survival, safety can feel like danger at first, but give it time. Let the confusion sit. Let it breathe. Let it guide you inward. You may just find that what confused you wasn't the person. It was your old pain realizing it can no longer stay. And the miracle of love isn't that it fixes you, but that it finds you exactly where you are and loves you enough to leave no part of you untouched. We often expect that when something is meant for us, it will arrive at the perfect time, when we've healed, when we've grown, when everything in our life looks like it's in perfect order. That's how we think divine timing should work, right? That God will introduce us to our chosen partner only when we feel completely ready. But the truth, God's timing rarely aligns with our schedule. He doesn't wait until you feel ready. He moves when it's right. And that's what throws us off, because when you meet someone who stirs something deep inside of you, something you didn't expect, you might feel confused. You might say, but I'm still figuring myself out, or I didn't plan for this now, or I'm not emotionally prepared. And still, there they are, not to interrupt your life, but to awaken something in it. See, God's idea of timing is far less concerned with your comfort and far more concerned with your growth. You may meet this person when you're still healing from heartbreak, or while you're knee deep in building your career, or when you've just sworn off relationships altogether, and in that space of disorientation, you question whether the connection is real simply because the timing feels off. But think about it, why would something truly transformational arrive only when it's easy? Why would purpose come only when we're prepared? The truth is, the right person often shows up not to reward your readiness, but to reveal it. You may not feel ready, but your spirit is. And God knows that. He knows what your soul is prepared to carry, even when your mind isn't aware of it yet. There's something sacred about being disrupted, about someone showing up in the middle of your plans and challenging the way you've been living, thinking, feeling, not in a chaotic way, but in a way that gently asks, what if this is what you've been praying for all along, just dressed in a moment you didn't expect? That's the kind of question that stirs confusion, not because it's wrong, but because it's divine. You may even find yourself trying to resist it. You'll convince yourself you need more time, more healing, more answers. But maybe the answers aren't ahead of you. Maybe they're unfolding right here. In this unexpected meeting, in this awkward beginning, sometimes the plan is hidden inside the interruption. It's easy to assume that the wrong time means the wrong person, but divine timing doesn't always come with a trumpet blast and open roads. Sometimes it comes when you're tired, when you feel behind, when you're in the middle of something else entirely. And that's when it takes real trust to say, I don't understand this right now, but I'm going to stay open to it. And maybe, just maybe, the timing feels off because what's happening is bigger than you. Maybe the person in front of you is connected not just to your heart, but to your calling. Maybe they weren't sent to fit neatly into your life, but to expand it. Maybe the delay you've been experiencing wasn't punishment, it was preparation. For this exact moment, for this exact meeting, it's okay to be confused. It's okay to feel uncertain. That's what happens when something larger than your logic begins to move. The important thing is not to shut down just because the calendar doesn't make sense. Love doesn't run on your clock. It runs on alignment. And sometimes divine alignment looks like divine disruption. So when you find yourself meeting someone and the timing feels wrong, don't be so quick to dismiss it. Pay attention, because what you call inconvenient might just be God's perfect entrance. And remember, life doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It waits for you to be real enough to answer when the knock finally comes. One of the most subtle yet profound ways God protects us is by not giving us what we want in the exact form we imagine it. Especially when it comes to love, we think we know what we need. We build ideals in our mind, curate checklists, dream up scenarios of how the perfect person will look, speak, behave, and align with every one of our preferences. But God, in his quiet wisdom, isn't interested in giving you someone who simply fits your list. He's far more interested in giving you someone who matches your mission, someone who aligns not with your fantasies, but with your future. And that's why when your chosen partner finally appears, it can be so confusing, because they might not seem compatible in all the obvious ways. They might challenge you, stretch you, mirror back parts of yourself you'd rather keep tucked away. They might not share all your interests. They might not move at your pace, and they might not bring the same kind of comfort you're used to. And yet, there's something about them that makes your soul sit up straighter. This is where many people turn away, because we've been trained to idolize compatibility over calling, to believe that a perfect match means shared hobbies, similar tastes, mirrored temperaments. But the truth is, compatibility is a shifting surface. Calling runs deep. Compatibility can make things easy, but calling makes things meaningful. God isn't trying to pair you with someone who just makes sense. He's trying to pair you with someone who makes purpose. And that might mean discomfort at first. It might mean wrestling with your expectations. It might mean choosing the path of growth over ease, of wholeness over harmony. That kind of connection doesn't just make you feel good. It makes you become more you. The person who is sent for your destiny won't always make your ego feel flattered, but they will nourish your soul. They'll call out potential you forgot you had. They'll challenge you to rise. They'll see the deeper layers in you that others missed or ignored. And their presence will ask a question: are you willing to trade convenience for transformation? So when you meet someone who doesn't look like the person you pictured, pause before you walk away, because the right person may not always come wrapped in instant chemistry or common tastes. Sometimes they come in quietly, with honesty, with depth, with grace. And at first, you don't even recognize it as love. You recognize it as interruption, as confusion, but what you're really feeling is your soul adjusting to truth. You may be tempted to retreat, to run back to what's familiar, to someone who makes you feel the highs without asking you to grow. But compatibility without calling eventually fades. And God isn't interested in giving you temporary comfort. He's interested in permanent alignment, not someone who simply makes life easier, but someone who makes life richer. And yes, it will require discernment. Not every difference is divine, but there's a distinct difference between something that feels unfamiliar because it's wrong and something that feels unfamiliar because its new growth is always uncomfortable at first. And when God is moving in your life, it often comes wrapped in mystery. You'll feel a pull you can't explain, a peace you can't place. And in that moment, you have a choice to dismiss it because it doesn't match your idea, or to trust that what God designs rarely looks like what we imagine, but always feels like what we need. The truth is, if God gave you what you wanted, you might miss what you were made for. So he sends what will stretch you, open you, refine you, not to confuse you, but to awaken you to the kind of love that changes everything. Because the partner destined for your purpose won't always match your picture, but they will mirror your becoming. We love the idea of peace. We crave it. That warm, undeniable feeling of this is right. And so when it comes to love, especially the kind we believe God has orchestrated, we expect peace to come first. We imagine meeting the one and instantly feeling a wave of clarity, calm, and assurance. But in truth, peace doesn't always greet you at the door. Sometimes it waits just around the corner, showing up only after you've taken the leap of faith. And that's what makes meeting your chosen partner so confusing. You may not feel that immediate stillness. You might feel overwhelmed, doubtful, vulnerable, and you start to question the whole thing. If this is really from God, why don't I feel totally at ease? But maybe that's because God is doing something deeper than comfort. Maybe he's using this very connection to teach you how to walk by faith, not by the feeling you're used to labeling as peace. We forget that peace isn't always the starting point. Sometimes it's the byproduct of trust, of obedience, of saying yes before you have all the answers. You may be waiting for the clarity to come before you take a step. But what if the clarity only arrives after you move? What if it's not about being certain, but about being open, being brave enough to step toward what your soul whispers is real, even when your mind doesn't have the full picture? Because here's the thing, peace that requires no risk isn't peace. It's control. It's comfort masquerading as alignment. Real peace, the kind that lasts, often comes after you let go of needing to understand everything. After you've leaned into what feels sacred, even if it doesn't feel simple. You may feel confused because God is stretching you, not to harm you, but to prepare you, to build in you the kind of faith that can carry something real. The kind of faith doesn't rely on goosebump signs or certainty, but on quiet, unwavering trust. Trust that says, I don't need to feel it all right now. I just need to show up. And when you do, something shifts. Not all at once, but slowly, gently. You begin to notice the confusion softening, the resistance melting. You begin to see the outlines of something sacred forming in the midst of what once felt unclear. That's peace. Not the loud, flashy kind, but the deep-rooted kind, the kind that grows from trust, not from avoidance. The kind that holds you steady in love, not because it came easy, but because you stayed through the uncertainty long enough to witness what it became. This is where many people miss it. They walk away too early, mistaking the lack of initial peace for a lack of divine presence. But the presence was there all along. It just wasn't loud. It was subtle, gentle, waiting for you to slow down enough to notice, to see that not all peace comes like a lightning bolt. Some peace blooms in the aftermath of your surrender. So when you meet someone who confuses you, not because they're inconsistent or unhealthy, but because they awaken something deeper. Pause, look again, feel beneath the noise, ask not just, do I feel peace right now, but am I willing to walk toward it? Because when love is real, peace doesn't always knock first. Sometimes it follows after you've opened the door. And that, I suppose, is the great irony of divine connection. It doesn't demand your certainty. It only asks for your presence, for you to be still enough to feel beyond your fears and brave enough to step forward anyway. Because the kind of peace that's worth having isn't the one that comes before the choice. It's the one that's born because you made it